What do the Baltimore Ravens need to do at the wide receiver position now that Rashod Bateman is out for the rest of the 2022 season? We talk about that. Roquan Smith, the Ravens and Saints Monday Night Football matchup, and more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens with a very special guest.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today here, making us your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms, including over on YouTube. And if you're here with us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to this channel, like the video in audio form. Be sure to follow along there. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is who covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And we are back. It is technically Purple Friday, although the Ravens do play on Monday this week against the Saints. And here with us to break down Roquan Smith, the wide receiver position, and that Ravens Saints game is former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, Qadry Ismail. Q, it's been a whirlwind. It's been a whirlwind of a week this week. Baltimore getting Roquan Smith. Obviously, the news with Rashod Bateman we'll talk about in the second segment. And the Ravens play on primetime yet again in Monday Night Football.
I tell you what, Kevin, like there is the anticipation of getting, my presents on Christmas and on birthdays and all that. And this kind of felt that same way. You just was like, oh my goodness, are they going to do something? And apparently in, John Harbaugh's press conference, Jamison Hensley asked if he was, going to do anything, or they, meaning him and Eric Costa, are going to do anything from a trade aspect of things. And sure enough, they apparently had stuff in the works, and they, John Coyley was, kind of skirting around the edges of whether or not Chicago and the Ravens can actually get it done, and apparently they did. And whoo, here comes Roquan Smith, and what a time to have a key player, the likes of Roquan, added to the team, especially coming off of a decisive road victory against a good team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, they might not be firing on all cylinders, but they still are a good team. They still have, some really good players. And if you sleep on them, they would definitely take you to task. So I just think that it came at the right time. And, man, you got your Monday Night Football game. You got your open weekend. So there's a lot that can happen for him Monday night, and then him kind of assimilating even further into this Ravens defense. And moving forward, I'm excited to see how it all turns out.
Yeah, and it's funny because the Ravens have had that mini bye week to the max because they played on Thursday night and then they go all the way into next Monday night, which is going to be now this Monday night. But then after that, Roquan Smith has the actual bye week to get acclimated to everything on the Baltimore defensive side of things. So really cool there. And Q, I would ask you if you thought they would trade for an inside linebacker, but I know the answer to the question. It's yes, because here last week you said that if the Ravens were to make a move, you thought it would be at the inside linebacker position, and they get their guy in Roquan Smith. Now, this isn't necessarily a depth move. I mean, it adds depth to the position, but he's a star. Two-time All-Pro at 25 years old, one of the best at his position in coverage, pursuit, sacks. I mean, he does do it all, and I think the big part of this Q, or at least one of them, is the part that he gets to play with Patrick Queen, and those two guys get to play off of each other and also learn from each other. I know something Patrick Queen talked about, and also Smith during their media availability.
Yeah, I think the middle linebacker position, and why I kind of looked at it as something of a need if you were going to trade, it's about your instincts. It's about, the feel of the game. The linebacker, he runs a show. Yeah, you can have other voices. You can have, I don't know. I know last year Chuck Clark was like, wow, hey, Chuck Clark, real cerebral guy. And, he wears a green dot. Patrick Queen, obviously, in his first 2 years, kind of not as good. Then third year, a little bit better. And now, we're seeing what he can potentially be from a consistency standpoint. When you look at D line, yeah, it's cool, but they're primarily stopping that run and getting in the mix as far as an impact play here or there. But they're constant rotation. That middle linebacker, especially if he's a 3-down player, he sets the tone. He's the one who's going to read the nuances, relay them both to the secondary as well as the D line and his fellow linebackers. He's the one who is the quarterback of the defense. And so with that nuance, you have to also have that specialness, that big play capability. The big play capability means that when you go in there and tackle a running back or tackle a tight end or tackle a receiver maybe on a quick screen, they need to be sudden. They need to be like, oh, God, oh, I got tackled. And then there's also those game-changing plays where now the ball comes loose, or you're getting a strip, or you're getting an interception, a key interception, and you turn in the tide. Oh, gee, did I just describe Ray Lewis and all this? Yes, I played with him. I should know. Bruh, there's something about that middle linebacker that can play extremely well. Now, for the Ravens, they've also had the luxury of having, kind of that leadership at the linebacker position on the outside, and Terrell Suggs too. So I'm not saying exclusively it's middle linebacker, but it sure helps. And, Patrick Queen, him coming into his own, I think that's really important. Overall, I just think it's an A+. I know that he's just going to get to a place and a space where, his leadership qualities are going to come through and be infectious to the rest of the defense.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch him play, and obviously the hope is for him to get out there on the field for Monday night. So we'll see him in that number 18, that glorious number 18 that has been worn by most recently Jeremy Maclin, so Ravens legend over there. But I think also, Q, when you're talking about a trade, it obviously goes both ways. You have Baltimore bringing in Roquan Smith, but they are shipping out a 2nd-round pick, a 5th-round pick, and also A.J. Klein. Were you shocked that they actually went to the lengths to give up a 2nd-round pick in this deal, especially considering this could be a rental because Roquan Smith is a free agent after this season?
Somewhat, but you realize that you have like the win now attitude, and if you don't capture that, the window is an unknown window with your quarterback in limbo with his contract. And so I think it's important that you do things that you feel you need to do to, who you going to get? Another Sergio Kindle or something? I mean, like what? Like, come on. Like you got to Arthur Brown yourself into a position where Roquan Smith comes up in this mug, take him. And it if it's a first rounder, okay, I get it, Ravens way of doing things, all that. But I will Arthur Brown, Sergio Kindle my way into Roquan Smith, brother. Come on now, let's do this. And for the offseason, right now, all I know is Monday Night Football is coming up, and you got number 18, Roquan Smith, and I'm liking every bit of it.
Yeah, Roquan Smith it should be a really great addition. And I think when you're talking about this, trading the 2nd rounder, you're right. The Ravens' history of 2nd rounders since maybe 2010, we'll call it, it's been kind of spotty. You do have the Tyus Bowsers and the Kelechi Osemele's and the Torrey Smiths and the J.K. Dobbins of the world. But you also have, as you talked about, the Sergio Kindles and the Arthur Browns and the Terrence Codys and all those kinds of players that you're like, oh, the Ravens probably could have done without those guys. So my whole thing, Q, is Roquan Smith is 10 times what you want your 2nd-round pick to turn into. I understand the paying him $20 million per season. I get, if that's what they have to do, your 2nd-round pick isn't making, 15 to 20 to 25 million per year. But at the same time, the talent level is undeniable, and I'm excited for it. But we're not done talking about the trade deadline yet. In the second segment, we'll dive into if the Ravens should have traded for a wide receiver and what they do now after the news of Rashod Bateman's injury. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to talk about here on the show. This episode is brought to you by Prediction Strike, the world's first sports stock market. You can now invest in professional athletes just like stocks. It's a lower risk alternative to sports betting, and athlete prices move based on performance performance and supply and demand. So if you invested in Jalen Hurts 1 year ago, you'd be up 48.2%. Rashad Penny before his injury was up sky high, and there are tons of other options to look at as well. And all athletes benefit too and are entitled to a percentage of their market cap, unlike other sports betting companies. You have 2.5% trade fees, the lowest in real money sports, and you can invest in 4 sports, not just the NFL, but the UFC, the NBA, and the MLB as well. So now the Prediction Strike app and use code LOCKED for a free share when you sign up and make a first deposit of $20 or more. That's promo code LOCKED for a special one-time giveaway. Prediction Strike will choose one person who signs up with code LOCKED to make a deposit to win 100 free random shares. That could be worth up to $3,000 if you get lucky and receive Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen shares. So invest in what you know on Prediction Strike, the stock market for sports. And I also want to tell you a bit about Built Bar. And you've got to try this. I'm talking about Built Bar's new reimagined flavors such as cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, and coconut brownie topper. You also have white chocolate peppermint granola. It's Built's take on the granola bar, so it's more filling and still insanely tasty, and candy cane brownie puff. Built Puffs are like biting into the universe's most delicious cloud. For anyone who hasn't tried Built Bars before, they are literally the best tasting protein bars ever built. They're revolutionizing nutrition as we know it with 100% real chocolate, 17 grams of protein, and shockingly low sugar and calories, only 130 of those. So sink your teeth into that first bite and it'll change your life forever. Built, you got to try this. Get 15% off of your order right away by using the code LOCKEDON15 at built.com. We're back here, our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher still here with Qadry Ismail and Q. We'll continue our trade deadline conversation here, and then we'll transition into Rashod Bateman. But it all kind of goes hand in hand now. I had said that the Ravens, it would have been nice, I'll say, if they would have traded for a wide receiver at the deadline. I understand that, Chase Claypool went for a second, so that market must have been very out of whack. But at the same time, with Bateman's injury, even before the deadline, John Harbaugh was saying, yeah, it's a little more serious than we thought it was going to be. Now, nobody really knew what that meant. But on Thursday, we figured out what that meant as Harbaugh announced that Bateman is going to be out for the rest of the season after deciding to undergo surgery for a Lisfranc injury, something I know Ravens fans are familiar with Marquise Brown and others. So Q, when the Ravens didn't trade for a wide receiver, let's start before the Bateman injury. When the Ravens didn't trade for a wide receiver after Roquan Smith, was it something you wished they had done in that moment?
As far as the wide receiver aspect of things compared to Roquan? Oh,
no, with Roquan in there.
So I think they kind of already knew that there was something more to his injury, and I think that it wasn't oh gee darn surprise kind of a thing. I think it was more along the lines of we recognize that Roquan is available, we're going to go after him. Not we recognize Roquan's available, we're going to go after him. Oh my gosh, the house is burning down at the receiver position because Bateman's not here. We need to go ahead. I honestly think, as much as the people on the outside are clamoring for another guy, I think that they feel good about the people that they have in-house. Not what you want to hear, social media, just goodness gracious, they just jump all over it. When are we going to get a receiver? When are we going to get a receiver? I've been saying it. I'm still going to be saying it. They don't prioritize it. And it's not that they don't prioritize it because of some kind of whatever, but I think in their heart of hearts, it's one of those things where, okay, we want to look at the tight end position. They feel really good, and rightly so, about Devin Duvernay. And I think James Prochet, mentally, I think he's in a better space than where he was, and not necessarily in that proverbial John Harbaugh doghouse. I don't know, Kevin. I just think it's not that he cannot, but the numbers is where he likes to dwell. He's not that traditional outside throwing quarterback. And that's okay. When he does throw it, he does. But outside of that, it's more along the lines of numbers and in. For Lamar, okay, let's see how it happens when those safeties, because defensive coordinators are going to be looking at the film. defensive coordinators are going to be like, yo, let's bring our safeties down and hug them up, if you will. Hug them up closer to the line of scrimmage. And if that's the case, we're going to see what Deshaun Jackson can do as far as taking the top off the defense. Otherwise, I think, whether it be Duvernay, who's now going to be receiver one, or Wallace and Prochet kind of tag teaming it at receiver two, priority is get the tight ends the ball. That's just what it is. So I don't think that they were looking to trade for a receiver. I really don't.
And it's interesting because we do know that the pass offense does run through the tight ends, and it's not a secret. It has happened for years now. And Mark Andrews is the number one pass catching option on the offense. But now the situation for Baltimore is Andrews didn't practice on Thursday with a shoulder and a knee injury, according to the injury report. Bateman is now down for the season. So with Baltimore, and as I've said, I've put it this way many times, everybody moves up a spot on the depth chart, a rung on the ladder. And so now what happens if Devin Duvernay goes down and you don't have Bateman for the season, and maybe Duvernay has to miss a couple weeks here and there? Duvernay's already missed time. So you think with the wide receiver position that, okay, they might add some depth here and there, but that addition right now has been Deshaun Jackson during the year and DeMarcus Robinson during the off season. So now Q, with the wide receiver position being what it is, the trade deadline's gone. You can't trade for anybody anymore. Obviously, Baltimore had that shot. They didn't do anything with it. So you look back to the conversations that we have had, I know multiple times on this show, which is the free agent market. Hugh, in your estimation, do you go after Odell Beckham? Do you go after Will Fuller? Or is this truly a situation where you feel like they are going to ride it out with their guys, barring anything else, and really go with Devin Duvernay as the one, DeMarcus Robinson, Tylan Wallace, James Prochet, Deshaun Jackson, etc.?
First of all, DeMarcus Robinson, I apologize for not adding him into the equation. He's going to be receiver number two. You'll have literally Tylan Wallace probably be active now from a special teams aspect of things. And so, you're going to get James Prochet. Then when it comes to, just the overall look of free agency, I mean, Odell Beckham, he got a knee himself, and you got a team dealing with knees, the ACL knee and all the things that it entails. I don't know. I'm not exactly like that high on the list for him. I think there's a level of catching up and trying to get on the same page with a quarterback. You just don't jump right on into it, if you will. And this is late in the year. That's where I think maybe going back to the Rams would best suit him. I think Fuller, it depends. It depends on, I think, Deshaun Jackson. We keep on. I mean, because he's 35, and I get that and all the things, but we keep forgetting. Like from all reports, Lamar, John Harbaugh, they're saying that he looks just as good as he's done in the past, as far as running routes and stuff, and that means he must be running right by folks. So if that's the case, then what are we saying? I don't know. What is our fascination with going out and looking for the prettiest girl when you got a girl on your arm already?
I think for me, I always, and I've said it, needle moving moves is what I prioritize if I'm an NFL team. And obviously I'm not, but that's what I would prioritize. And so you can look at all these wide receivers on the market right now. I think the only two that would move a needle for Baltimore would be a healthy Odell Beckham and a healthy Will Fuller. Now, those two have injury concerns. Odell Beckham, when is he going to be ready to get back on the field? It is a question because he obviously tore the ACL in the Super Bowl in February. So what does he look like? When is he going to be available? Is this a playoff situation for Odell? Is it maybe December? So I don't know what that would be, but I do think adding some sort of depth. Now, it feels like Odell to the Bills has been talked up for like the whole year pretty much. So maybe that's what happens. Fuller, I don't know what the situation is, but if you can get a couple healthy games out of those guys, and even if Deshaun Jackson gives you two good healthy games, then he goes on IR or something, because obviously he's had injury concerns himself. But I just think with the way it has gone this year, if you don't have enough depth in that room, and if Devin Duvernay goes down, that's my worry, and it has been my worry. It is what happens if Bateman goes down and what happens if Duvernay goes down. Unfortunately, they're half of the way there right now. So if they have another injury to Devin Duvernay or Mark Andrews can't play in this game against the Saints, we saw Isaiah Likely step up. We saw DeMarcus Robinson step up. We saw James Prochet step up, et cetera, but they're going to have to do that on a weekly basis. I think they could do it, but I would rather also have some more depth in there just in case. So there are many varying viewpoints with this whole thing. And Q, I want to get your viewpoint on Bateman himself. There's been a lot of conversation. Obviously, had the core surgery before his rookie season started, comes back in week 6. This injury now is going to cost him probably like 2/3 of his second season, dating back to week 6. So he's had a couple injuries impacting. The talent is there. It is obviously there. We've seen him flash it. But where are you with Bateman and this injury? And just, is it a long-term concern for you? Is this something that obviously with surgery will maybe just heal up and it'll be good? Because the Lisfranc injuries can be kind of difficult in some circumstances.
Yeah, they can. And I know personally, when it comes to foot surgery, putting that screw in there, it is somewhat of a frustration. I also know from a training aspect of things, I said it last year on our podcast, plenty. Heels down training. If you do that, you put yourself at risk. And by doing that, I'm not saying that the players knowingly trying to do that. I just think that from a traditional way of training, that they don't know any better. And so for Bateman, there are ways that I've seen him run technique wise that tend to give me pause, because I'm like, I can still see where they're not allowing that ankle and hip complex to work in unison together, and it's putting him at risk. So, there's a couple other guys there too, but he's the one who's going to be out. He's the one having the surgery. And since he's having the surgery, he's the one who's going to have to come back and rehab. After the rehab, it's more heels down training. So I think it's going to be an issue throughout the rest of his career.
And it'll be interesting to see how Bateman bounce. Obviously, he loves the game of football. Post it on Instagram. See everybody next year. We understand the talent is there. He was drafted in the first round, flashed it at Minnesota, but being on the field is a big part of that. And all these missed games, it's disappointing for a lot of people. Disappointing for him, obviously. First off, he must be so frustrated right now. So I feel for him most definitely. But I think now the Ravens, they just have to move forward, and I would hope they will go out there and just at least look for a free agent wide receiver, if nothing else, and maybe bring in somebody.
I think honestly, I think they are. I think it's on the radar. I just don't think that they just are prioritizing it like they are prioritizing the linebacker position. And clearly Roquan Smith, was made available, and here we are. You know what I'm saying? So I just, man, ever since they got rid of Anquan, it's just never been the same.
They had Steve Smith in there for a couple of years, and those were
Steve Smith. I mean, and I'm not to cut you off. I mean, I think he was phenomenal, fantastic. But Anquan was just different. I think if we had to rank Raven receivers, Anquan from a free agency standpoint, he's right there at 1. I would put Derek Mason over Steve Smith. I think Steve Smith was great. Don't get me wrong, but I would put Anquan first, and then Derek Mason as far as a Raven and what he was able to produce.
Well, I think the other great aspect of the Anquan thing was the fact that Baltimore knew that they needed him, so they went out there and traded for him. I mean, it was that big move where the Ravens, they gave up the draft capital. They identified him as, hey, we need to get this guy, and they got him out of Arizona, and he was so good for them. So, there's no set look. It's too early to call Rashod Bateman a bust. I understand that people are frustrated with the injuries, but it's too early. It's a second season, and it's been injuries. It hasn't been like the drops have been there, right? We've talked about the drops for Bateman before, but I still think there is time for Rashod Bateman. I'm not personally giving up on Rashod Bateman right now. But coming up in the final segment, we'll be diving into the Saints game a little bit, previewing that Monday Night Football matchup. Baltimore's actually last primetime game of the season right now, so be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to dive into here on Locked On Ravens. First, though, I do want to tell you a bit about LinkedIn. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. And I've used LinkedIn for a ton of things in my life before, and it's super easy to create a free job post on LinkedIn Jobs. Just add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. They have simple tools you can use like screening questions to make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and who you'd like to hire. And you have to finish the year strong, and the right team member can help you do that. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one is delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're back rounding out Locked On Ravens here on a Purple Friday. Qadry Ismail is here with me, Kevin Ostraker still, and we're going to now be diving into that Saints game a little bit. And cue the Ravens 2 straight wins. They finally have a winning streak. It took them a long time, but we're finally here with it. And now they go into New Orleans and play another primetime game back-to-back Monday Night Football against who else? It's Andy Dalton. And Ravens fans are very familiar with Andy Dalton, that Andy Dalton-AJ Green combo gave him some problems in Cincinnati when it was there. The Saints right now are having a season that I think a lot of people would like to forget. Rashod Bateman obviously out for the year in Baltimore, but the Saints getting some bad news with Michael Thomas. He's likely done for this season with a toe injury. So, Q, where are your thoughts on this game? Because it feels like, again, the Ravens, after that second half offensive performance against Tampa, have momentum there. The defense adjusted. They have momentum there. I feel like this is a game Baltimore can win when factoring in what they have done over these past couple weeks, and it seems like the team is starting to believe in themselves, even when stuff does go a bit wrong.
Yeah, and lost in all this, you see a extremely cohesive unit in the defensive front for the Ravens. I think we're seeing a continual growth of the secondary with, in particular, Kyle Hamilton. I think we're also, looking at a more ticked off, motivated corner in Marlon Humphreys as well as Peters. So I think this defense is like, oh, okay, Andy Dalton, what's up? You next then. I know Andy, knows the Ravens, and the Ravens know him. What is this, like the third time from a franchise aspect of things, that we've seen them go up against an Andy Dalton-led football team. And so I don't know, but I do know this. For Andy Dalton, without, guys like a Michael Thomas, it's pin your ears back. He's going to give you one. Are you ready to receive it? That's kind of where I look at it with his quarterback play against the Ravens. Still has his arm. He's going to, deliver it. He's an intermediate to deep ball thrower. And he doesn't – thank goodness he doesn't have a prime AJ Green. Whew. So that's good because that dude was a Raven killer. But outside of that, yeah, I just think that, Andy Dalton, this defense is prime and ready to feast on him. I really think it's going to be – this is going to be a defensive front, pin your ears back kind of a night for what I'm seeing from the Ravens and what we've seen the last few weeks.
Right. You mentioned those 3 teams. Obviously, Cincinnati, all those times that we saw him in Cincinnati. Then you have the Chicago team last year where Andy Dalton almost led them to a win. And then now, obviously, in New Orleans. And Q, they have some receivers there. I mentioned Thomas. He's done. Jarvis Landry could potentially come back for this game, but Chris Olave has been their star rookie out of Ohio State this season. Obviously, you got to look out for the chess piece in Taysom Hill and what he can bring to the table. Alvin Kamara had 3 touchdowns against the Raiders last week. And on defense, Tyrann Mathieu, kind of like a Ravens legend, not really because he never signed in Baltimore, but there are so many people talking about Tyrann Mathieu. He's in New Orleans, Marcus May, and I'm sad we're not going to see Marcus Williams in this one, kind of a Marcus Williams revenge game. I thought that would be great, but I think they're going to go out there and win it for him. I think that'll be what they do for him, but Q, if you're the Ravens defense, you mentioned kind of go get Andy Dalton, but how do you stop Alvin Kamara and the rest of the Saints offensive weapons?
Yeah, I know. I think this is where your Roquan Smith comes in. Alvin Kamara is a special back, and I think you got guys who can pursue Alvin Kamara, and I think that's really that is the difference maker right there, and why you get a Roquan Smith to go up against guys like Alvin Kamara. The other guys, they're guys, they're good. Alvin Kamara, impact player. you got to watch out where he's at. And I think that now with the addition of Roquan, you kind of have a little bit more swagger to say, hey, all right, come at us with your best and let's see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. I think two very talented teams. The Saints actually rank in the top 10 in both pass offense and rush offense. They are top 7, actually. They're 7th in both net yards per attempt through the air and yards per attempt on the ground. So it's going to be a tough test for the Ravens defense, but you're hoping Roquan Smith plays, seems likely. You're hoping Tyus Bowser plays, seems like he'll be ready. It feels like, obviously nothing's set in stone right now, but the returns are good. It feels like. How do you think his role is going to be in this one? You feel like it's going to be a snap count, or you think they're going to throw him in Gus Edwards style and say, go out there and play some football?
Well, I think it all depends on him. I mean, that hamstring, Achilles, it's weird because when you are ready, again, I'm prefacing it with personal firsthand knowledge. Had the Achilles myself. I know that, yeah, well past the time when I played, but I've also seen other guys, Terrell Suggs, for example, tore both of his Achilles. Heels down training will do that to you. And I think for what we're seeing from Tyus Bowser, he might not be as talented as Terrell Suggs, but he has that quality, if you will, poor man's version of him. And so I think he can go out there and thrive. I think it could be pitch count by default, if you will, meaning okay, he's playing well, or oh, okay, he's out there, he's getting his feet wet, he's contributing, not doing anything bad, but not doing anything, playmaking special. Then I just think that that's how the game is going to be played out. It depends on how well he does and how well he feels when it comes to the length of his playing time and plays.
Right. So hopefully he is out there and he'll be able to get his feet under him for sure. But Q, let's do predictions. It seems like you're pretty confident this is a Ravens win. Am I reading it right?
I think you are reading it extremely correct. It's going to be loud. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be one of those things where, guys are going to have to really lock in and make sure that they understand, what the nuance of the defense, what the nuance is of the offense. Clearly, from an offense standpoint, the crowd's going to be louder, but you don't want the momentum of the crowd to be swayed, I guess, is the bottom line. So great atmosphere, but I think the Ravens can get on the road and come away with a victory.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it will be a higher scoring game. My prediction is 30-24 in that way. It feels like you're going more blowout though. Do you have a score?
Yeah, I think it's going to be 35-17 Ravens. I think it's one of those fourth quarters of running the ball and they get fatigued. I think Cam Jordan, gets a little bit like frustrated and just that pursuit. You can only pursue but so much. And all of a sudden you get a big run. Drake and company just doing their thing. So that's my prediction.
All right, 35-17. Q has a. Hopefully you get Mark Andrews in there. Hopefully you get Gus Edwards in there too. It's pretty unclear right now, but we'll have more updates for that on Monday. But Q, thank you so much for hopping on with me again. That's all I have for you. And Ravens get a bye next week, a little relaxation and recovery for this team. And let's hope they can do it after a win, and that would be 3 straight.
Yeah, I think it'll be great. I think it'll come at the right time. And you're absolutely right. A bye feels really good when you're coming off a victory. So Monday Night Football, here we go.
Last primetime game of the year, unless there's a flex, and maybe there is a flex, but for now you got to cherish it. Monday Night Football under the bright lights. But thank you again, Q. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. When we get back here on Monday after our 2-day break, we'll be diving into a full game preview of that Ravens and Saints Monday Night Football matchup, game day style. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you right back here on Monday.